Okay, so this video is going to walk you through what to fill out for me while you're at home for these first two sections. There's going to be more sections in this, but these first two sections. I'm going to send the material again. Follow this video, pause it when you need to review something that I just said, or just get an answer that I went over really quickly. So this first section is the principles of the Constitution, and you'll see that there are 7 matching terms with descriptions below them. You're going to take the term and you're going to put it with the description that meets that term's definition. So the 7 terms, not necessarily in the same order it could be: checks and balances, federalism, individual rights, limited government, popular sovereignty, republicanism, separation of powers. You will see these in the email I sent you that have the 7 terms, and they're usually labeled A through, I think, G. Do not put the letter for the answer. Write or type up the actual name of the term so you can help you remember it. So these terms, they mean the following things. And what you're going to do now is, as I describe the terms, you're going to put them as into like the answer box, the answer slot right before the definition for what it matches to. So I'm going to go in a different order than the options that they gave you, but just pause it, rewind it, go through all your answers, and then put it in the correct one. So checks and balances. So there's 3 branches of government. Each branch can check the power. What it means is restrict the power, lessen the power, lower the power of the other 2 branches. For instance, the legislative branch can check the executive branch by overriding vetoes with 2/3 of a vote. The executive branch can check the legislative branch by initiating vetoes. A veto is basically stopping a law that the legislative branch is passing. So that's checks and balances. Each branch can check the power of the other 2 branches. Again, there's legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch, 3 branches of government. That's what they are. 1, the legislative branch makes the laws, the executive branch, they enforce the laws, and then the judicial branch interprets the laws. The second term that I'm going to talk about is federalism. Federalism is where you have state and you have federal government powers, and sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're separate, and sometimes they're together. Okay? So here's what I mean by this. We have the Illinois government, and we have the federal government. That's in D.C. The Illinois government can issue driver's license. They can do state taxes. Federal government can do taxes as well, but it's the federal government's taxes. That's why when you start getting a paycheck, you'll see a deduction from your state taxes and your federal taxes. So they both can tax. Sometimes they share power. So federalism is basically the state and the federal government sharing powers, or they have their own powers too. The next term is individual rights. So this principle of government is the idea that you and I have rights that the government cannot take away. Sometimes they're listed as the Bill of Rights. So individual rights in the Bill of Rights are like freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, right to bear arms, no illegal search and seizure, so on and so forth. So those are individual rights. They're the Bill of Rights. The next term is limited government. And this has the idea that the government that should be limited in the power that they have, because too much government power is a bad thing. So basically the government only has power that's listed in the Constitution and nothing else. That's really the definition of limited government. Popular sovereignty is the fact that we, the people, give power to the government. Or in other words, government by the people. That is popular sovereignty, government by the people. It means that they work for us, we don't work for them. That's the power of popular sovereignty. Republicanism is a little bit different. That term is the idea that we don't make the laws as an individual citizens. We vote in representatives that make laws for us. So republicanism is that we're not deciding the laws, we decide the representative that decides the laws. And the final term is separation of powers. And I already talked about this before, but separation of powers is the fact that we have 3 branches of government. We have the legislative that makes the laws, the executive that enforces the laws, and the judicial that interprets the laws. So separation of powers is the 3 different branches of government. So that's the matching section of this first unit, but you also need to know a few other terms. So I'm going to go through a few terms with you. All I want you to do is write down the name and then write down what it means. Do your best with spelling. Fine with me. So the first thing to know is the idea of the Declaration of Independence. So the Declaration of Independence was our breakup letter with England. Basically, we used to be part of England, or Great Britain, and we wrote this Declaration of Independence saying, we're breaking up with you, peace out, and we decided to have our own country after this. One of the things that was in the Declaration of Independence is this thing called inalienable rights. And that's a good term to know. Inalienable rights are rights that cannot be taken away. Think back to the Bill of Rights, the idea of free speech and the freedom of religion. These are rights that cannot be taken away. So these are terms that you just want to know, inalienable rights, rights that cannot be taken away. Also, let's talk about a couple of other documents, if you will. The first document is called the Articles of Confederation. The first thing to write down about the Articles of Confederation is that it's the first government of the United States, first government of the United States. And it failed. And the reason why the Articles of Confederation failed, and this is what I'd write down, the Articles of Confederation failed because it could not raise taxes. That's one of the many reasons why it failed, but that's a big one. Because if you can't raise taxes, it means you can't fund an army, you can't build roads, infrastructure, and schools, and all these other things. So that was a big thing that caused the Articles of Confederation to fail. The other thing to write down about the Articles of Confederation is that the Constitution replaces it. That's a good thing to write down because that's what we're going to be talking about for like the last few weeks of school. The only other terms that I want you to talk about or know about for this unit are Federalist versus Anti-Federalist. So let's start with the Anti-Federalist. And there are two things to write down about the Anti-Federalist. One, they did not agree with the Constitution as it was written. And most importantly, two, for the Anti-Federalists, is they wanted a Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, and these rights determine or show that we have rights that cannot be taken away by the government. This includes freedom of speech, right to bear arms, no legal search and seizure, no quartering troops, you don't have to tell on yourself, the Fifth Amendment, no cruel and unusual punishments, speedy trials. All those Bill of Rights was put in place because of the Anti-Federalists. So Bill of Rights, Anti-Federalists. The next group is the Federalist group. And the Federalist group, you need to know that they were pro-Constitution, they were for the Constitution, but two, that they're for a strong central government. They wanted the government in D.C. to be the strongest part of our society and the state governments to be weaker than that strong central government. That's pretty much all you need for this first unit. So please, please, please fill out the worksheet and complete that. My next part of this video is going to talk about part two. Part two. In part two, all you have to do for this, it's going to be a lot, but all you have to do is there's 27 amendments. And I'm going to go through them right now, all 27 amendments. As I go through them, what I need you to do is for each amendment, amendment 1, 2, 3, all the way to 27, is you're going to type up a brief description of what they are. Keep it short. So I'm going to try to keep it short for you, okay? So you're going to type up Amendment 1, and then you're going to tell me what Amendment 1 stands for, and you're going to send that to me. So this is the same thing I sent you before. I'm going to give you a little bit more description of what you need to do. So Amendment 1, freedom. Write the word freedom because that's the big word to remember with Amendment 1 because the freedom aspect deals with multiple things. So Amendment 1 is freedom of speech. It's also freedom of religion, which means we can practice whatever religion we want. It means we can say our mind with freedom of speech, but there's limitations to all of these. There's freedom of assembly and petition, but the big word to remember, freedom, because that is really the big word for Amendment number 1. Amendment number 2, it's right to bear arms, but what I would write down is own a gun, because Amendment 2 has to do with owning a gun, okay? It allows us to protect our families. It allows us also to use it for recreational activities. It also allows us to hunt and provide food for our families if we choose to do so. Amendment 3, this one's kind of weird. So it's called quartering troops. What you should write down for Amendment 3 is that it makes it so we do not have to bring troops into our houses and feed them and give them shelter. So I know it seems weird, but back in the day, we actually had to do that. Amendment 3, we do not have to bring troops into our houses to give them shelter and food. Amendment 4. Amendment 4 is you cannot be searched and seized. In other words, a police officer cannot just like pull you aside and pat you down and check to see if you have drugs on you unless they have a warrant for your arrest or a warrant for your property search, or you give them a reason to, in the sense that, like, let's say they think you have drugs on you because you're smoking drugs. Well, if you're smoking drugs in front of an officer, they'll have the right to pat you down because you're doing something that gives them probable cause. But if you're just walking down the street, Amendment 4 says police officer can't just stop you and pat you down. That's what Amendment 4 is doing. So it's a good amendment. Amendment 5. This one is to remember. The remember this one is very simple. Don't tell on yourself. Amendment 5 says you don't have to tell on yourself. When you're arrested, you don't have to say anything. You can wait till your lawyer shows up. You don't have to tell them what you did or didn't do. Okay? So that's Amendment 5. Don't tell on yourself. Amendment 6. This is a speedy trial. So 2 words, speedy and trial. This means that the courts have to get you in there as soon as possible to get you in there, because if you were arrested for murder, they can't put you in jail for 10 years before your court date. So speedy trial for number 6. Number 7, this is trial by jury. This means there's a jury of your peers that will oversee your case. It's not just going to be judges. So trial by jury for number 7. Number 8, no cruel or unusual punishments. So when you're arrested, even if you're found guilty of something, they can't torture you. Okay? They also can't put giant fines on the things that you do. So that's number 8. Number 9 is a little strange, but I would remember it with just 2 words. Other rights. Other rights is the perfect thing for number 9. Okay? Number 10. Number 10 is states' rights. So states have rights that are beyond that which of the country. So states' rights, 2 words for number 10. All right, another 2 words for number 11. 11's tricky, but all I need you to do is remember federal courts, okay? It's a little more tricky than that, but basically it establishes that the federal court is the higher area of courts in our country, but just remember federal courts. You can remember that, that'd be fun. 12. 12, we vote for the president and vice president at the same time. That's what I write down for 12. We vote for the president and vice president at the same time. Instead of voting for them separately, they're on the same ticket. 13, freed the slaves. That's it. 14, if you're born here, you get all rights as an American. If you're born here, you get all rights as an American. That's 14. 15, all men can vote regardless of race. So it doesn't matter if you're black, Hispanic, if you're white, Asian, doesn't matter your race. You can vote if you're a man. So that's 15. 16, 2 words. Income tax. Income tax. This is actually the thing that brought down Al Capone. So we have to pay an income tax, and if you don't, you're going to have some problems. 17, vote for senators. 17 senators. 17 senators. Vote for senators. We can vote for our senators. We have 2 senators for each state, and this allows us to vote for them into office. 18, remember, you can't drink at 18 years of age. And the 18th Amendment, actually, ironically, 18 means no more alcohol. So say no alcohol for 18. 19, women can vote. Women can vote. 20, so all I want you to do is remember an animal. Quack, quack. Lame duck. What this means is it's shortened the amount of time from when the president is elected to when they take office, and also Congress. But lame duck. Just remember lame duck and you'll be fine for 20. 21, you can't drink at 18, but you can drink at 21. And the 21st Amendment says, yes, alcohol, we can drink again. 22 terms. 22 terms. The 22nd Amendment is 2 terms for the president. So write 2 terms for the president for the 22nd Amendment. 23 D.C. 23 D.C. 23 D.C. The 23rd Amendment says D.C. can vote for president. 24. 24 is no poll tax. What that means is you don't have to pay money to actually vote, and that's a good thing. We should have to pay to vote. So 24, no poll tax, you don't have to pay to vote. 25, if the president is unable to do his job, the vice president takes over. Put simply, if the president is sick, VP takes over. That's how I kind of remember it. 26, This one is if you're 18 years of age, you can vote. So 18 equals vote, or 18 you can vote. And finally, 27, Congress can raise their own pay, and that's all I really want you to know for 27. Congress can raise their own pay. So what you're doing with this is you're sending me all the amendments, type them up. Amendment 1, tell me what it does. Amendment 2, tell me what it does. Do that all the way to 27. You're going to email that back to me. This, along with the assignment that was in this video as well, get that to me by the end of the day, and then tomorrow I'll get you a new assignment. All right, peace out.